Good morning and welcome to this live Instagram masterclass by me, Captain Sam Hairsine of the Royal Marines Band Service. So whilst we're waiting for people to join us this morning, why don't we have a look at the magnificent mass bands of Her Majesty's Royal Marines Band Festival of Music. Great memory there. That was Heroes Unite, arranged by my fellow director of music, Darryl Powell, and that was from the Mountbatten Festival of Music 2019 that I was privileged to conduct at. So welcome everybody, hello. I can't say hello to all of you, so collectively, hi, and thank you very much for joining us. Please do fire your questions in as we're going along today. I'll try and keep an eye on them and answer them as we go. I'm going to divide this up into a couple of sections. So we're going to look, first of all, at score preparation and then the rehearsal itself to try and get the most that you can out of all of your rehearsals with your musicians and, of course, from yourself as well. Why should you listen to me at all? Well, I'll give you a little background into my musical upbringing and my career, and then maybe you can decide whether I'm worth listening to or not. So I started out in the local church choir. Then I auditioned and became a choral scholar at Lincoln Cathedral. That was 4.5 years I was there, and it was a great training. I guess that was my first professional music job, if you like, because we, being at the school, being in the choir, paid to go to school, so we were literally singing for our supper. We had 8 live performances a week, 10 rehearsals. The day off was still a school day, so a fair amount of time, a 7-day week. Of course, being a cathedral, working Christmas and Easter, and then getting a bit of holiday after that. So it was really great, but a wide range of music. Made 5 CDs and a tape, and live radio broadcasts, television broadcasts, and foreign tours as well. So it was a really good training. When I returned to East Yorkshire, I went to a school where the brass teacher just happened to be one of the greatest euphonium players that's ever lived, Bob Childs, a wonderful musician and a brilliant man. And so I swapped them. We had to learn 2 instruments at Lincoln. Piano and trumpet were mine, as well as singing. And I switched from trumpet, at which I was pretty terrible, onto euphonium. Bob gave me his euphonium, and I just seemed to take to it. It was a real natural step for me. As you can imagine, the brass group we had was really good. With most of us were in National Youth Ensembles. I was in the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain for 3 courses. And we again did foreign tours and loads of concerts and so forth. Then it got time to start thinking about what I was going to do after school and after college. Looking at auditioning for music colleges and universities. Fortunately, I had some really good advice. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do. Now, the military was always an option for me, and I didn't want to give up euphonium playing as a central part of my life. So the only way to be a professional euphonium player is in the military, really, unless you've got a teaching position in a conservatoire and busy solo schedule. But it's really in the military, and so I was looking around, asking around who's the best. People were telling me it was the Royal Marines, so I looked at the Royal Marines, went on a work experience week, which you can still do. We have look at live weeks, and for graduates, a bespoke week we can make for you in a band, so that was really worth doing for me. And then I decided, I wanted to get a degree for sure, but I'm not a big fan of debt, not just because I'm Northern, but it was the Royal Marines Band Service offered and still offers a fully funded BMAS Honours degree. So by the time I'd have finished university, or been still at music college, I'd been paid for 3 years as a professional musician. I was well into my degree course, and I'd been to Iceland twice, Italy. I had a great time with my mates in training, and so it's a really good option. I still think it's a very good option for young people to get a career in professional music, but also to get the education and the degree as well. After that, I've been in the bands, the Royal Marines bands of Dartmouth, Portsmouth. I was a founder member of the Royal Marines band Collingwood, Scotland as well. I was the volunteer band instructor at Yeovilton. I volunteered to be part of the Royal Marines band that went to Afghanistan on Operation Herrick 9. I was also in the Gulf in 2003 as a part of the band on RFA Argus, and really important experiences in many ways. But one thing it taught me was how much music matters. I guess Royal Marines musicians can take music where others just can't go, and we see when it really matters in people's darkest times, and when they really need music, we're there to supply it. So that was really important as a musician to know how much it can mean. So I was part of that, and then I commissioned in 2014. I've been the projects officer, the assistant director of music training at the Royal Marine School of Music, and also I auditioned, and I was fortunate to get a place at the Royal Northern College of Music, an absolutely fantastic conservatoire, to do my, again, fully funded master's degree in conducting. And it was there that I got all sorts of experience. I took the opportunity to conduct as many ensembles as I could, orchestras, brass bands, wind bands, small ensembles, get involved in everything that I could, opera scenes and all the rest of it. And I took the opportunity to go to Stavanger as an exchange with the University of Stavanger. Whilst I was over there, I conducted the Norwegian Armed Forces Band, Norwegian Air Force Band. I took the opportunity to go and see our friends in the US Marines President's Own Band over in Washington, DC, and the Dutch Marines as well. And I got the opportunity to conduct them, an absolutely astonishing band, as well as having masterclasses at the Royal Northern with people like Sir Mark Elder, Juanjo Mena, Mark Stringer, and many others, and assisting the principal conductors in various orchestras, so assisting Andrew Manzi and Christian Lindberg at the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, Michael Seal with the BBC Philharmonic, so a really amazing build-up of experience that, and of course having learned the cello in training as well, I had some experience of string playing as well as euphonium playing and brass playing, so that was really, really good training in the Royal Marine School of Music through the bandmasters course that led on to a master's in a top conservatoire. After that, I was appointed to be the director of music of the Royal Marines Band at Commando Training Centre Royal Marines, and I had a great 2 and a bit years. Again, wonderful experiences, as well as the day-to-day stuff, the many engagements and commitments we have, around about 1,500 a year for the band service. We had a trip to Hamina, the tattoo, over in Finland. That was brilliant, and I was invited to conduct the Red Army Band in concert at quite short notice, so all that training at the Royal Northern was really good for that. Fantastic experience, and took some musicians and buglers over to Mexico to do some diplomatic stuff, some defence engagement, but also we formed a joint orchestra, their premier military orchestra, and I was fortunate to conduct them in the National Conservatory of Mexico as well. That was absolutely amazing, and on our day off got to see the Day of the Dead parade, which was quite something. And then towards the end of my time at CTC, we got the trip to the World Band Festival in Lucerne, Switzerland, which is one of the best venues I've ever been in. Absolutely astonishing. And a great trip. But what made it, of course, was having a great band to lead and conduct. Now I'm the SO3, the Single Service Tasking Authority for the Royal Marines, so I send out all the gigs I wish I was doing. But it's great to engage with music whenever I can, and to hopefully pass on some knowledge today that you can use in your own rehearsals. As I said, I'm going to break this down into a couple of areas: score preparation, so what you need to do before rehearsal, and then some tips for rehearsal itself. These are massive topics, and you could spend a whole degree course doing either of them if you wanted. People write books on tiny parts of individual scores and composers' output. So I'm just going to give a few tips. Hopefully, whatever you do, you'll find something useful. If you're a player in an ensemble, maybe how you can contribute a bit more. If you're the leader of an ensemble, you don't have to be a conductor or a musical director. This can help just run a rehearsal better. And also, if you take a youth band or a youth orchestra, up to an amateur, perhaps a brass band or a wind band, all the way through, and hopefully there'll be something for you in this. So let's start talking about score preparation. Really, there are two overriding principles that we need to think of as leading a rehearsal. Know your score and know how to make it sound. That sounds simple, but it's just down to preparation, really. There's no magic, extra magic, anything astonishing going to happen on stage. It's only going to build up from what you put in the rehearsal room. And for us as leaders, what we put in beforehand. So score preparation is absolutely vital. Respect the music that you're conducting, respect the ensemble that you're directing, and don't turn up underprepared, because you won't get as much out of your rehearsal. The musicians will see straight through the fact that you're not prepared and you're wasting time. And time is something that none of us have nowadays, whether you're an amateur or a professional. So make sure that you do the preparation. There's a saying in the Royal Marines that time on recce is seldom wasted. It's the same with music and score preparation. Time in preparation is seldom wasted. Even if it's a piece you've done before, you know very well, why not have a look at it? Another look with fresh eyes. You might find something new or a new approach. So time in preparation is seldom wasted. Before you open the score, pick the right music. For you as an ensemble, but also as musicians and for the audience. We've got to always think of the audience, that we're doing it for them at the end of the day, aren't we? If you've got a youth band, there's always that dilemma. I've adjudicated some youth competitions before, and there's that dilemma of, do you go for something quite safe and try and nail the fundamentals? Do you take a risk to do something more musical, and maybe you'll fall over because the fundamentals aren't in place? That's something you've got to think about, but there is music out there that will take care of all of those aspects for you. So think about the music that you're going to pick. Make it right for your ensemble. Keep them interested as well. It's easy for us as directors just to get out something we know. I made a point at CTC band of never repeating myself if I could possibly avoid it. There were a couple of pieces that we did in the marches, but generally in a programme I didn't repeat anything. And that's good for the ensemble. It's good for me, but it's good for the audience as well, because whilst they like things that they know, they also like things that they don't know, because how do they know until you've played it? Don't pander as well in your choice of music. The great Tim Rennish would say, don't get rubbish out. Don't just get churned out arrangements that aren't very good. Do your band more of a favour than that. Get out an arrangement by a good arranger that you know their output. I do the same when I'm looking through a catalogue. I'll look for arrangers that I know do a fantastic job. So it may be tunes that you've played before, but arranged in a new way. Even if it's that, please make sure that you get some good stuff out. And support composers. There are new composers or young composers writing great music. And British composers, there are so many great composers out there. And if we just do the same old things, then, we're not really moving anything forward. And it's not at the expense of the audience. Our job in the Royal Marines is public service musicians, if you like, is to entertain. It's not to educate. But that doesn't mean that you have to play the same old stuff. So make sure that you're keeping yourself interested, you're keeping the band interested and the audience interested. So pick the right music. Prioritise your preparation. When you open your score, think of it as going into a building. So you can see the cathedral, it's in front of you, and what do? You look at it, you see the shape of it. You go into it, the cathedral, and you then start walking through. You see the structure of it. You can see how it's built, and you get an impression of the detail that's in there. You can start looking at the arches, the stained glass windows, but you don't stop and look in detail. You move through the piece, through the cathedral, the building, and then look at the points along the way. Once you've got a measure of it, and you've seen what it entails, you can then go back to the start and go through looking in detail. And that's what I do with a piece of music. I'll hear it through. I'll hear it through in my head if I can, or you can use a CD. Now this is quite controversial. Should you use a CD or not? Old school will say never listen to a recording. It spoils your version of it. It gives you ideas that might not be in the score, and that's the really important thing, that the score is king. That's what tells you what you need to be doing. All the clues are in there, and the research you do around it. However, it's worth thinking about recordings not as a shortcut, but as an addition to your preparation. I was fortunate enough to work with the Grindport Colliery Band in 2017 for brass in concert, and worked with Nigel Clark, wonderful man, wonderful composer, and they've just released a CD of his work. So if he's in the recording booth with musicians of that quality, he's still alive, so you can talk to him about it. Why isn't that considered a primary source as well? And it can be. That might be exactly as he wants to hear it. Doesn't mean there's not room to change it, and he'd encourage you to put your own spin on it and your own interpretation, but it's a really good place to start. So listen through, and I don't mark the score up first time. I just listen through it and just soak it all up. On my second read through, I'll start looking at tempos, keys, key changes, and the general dynamic structure of it. We need to be thinking about structure now as well, whether that's rondo form or sonata form or a simple ABA, just so you've got a grasp of the architecture of it. How you're going to take the audience and your musicians on that journey. Now, it's not a theoretical thing. This will tie into exactly how you're going to run your rehearsal, because if you've got an in-depth knowledge of your piece, you know where to jump to and what relates to what, so you can make your rehearsal more efficient by looking at a piece. Not only, so say the clarinets have a tricky rhythmic figure at bar 36, and you spend 5 minutes doing that, and then you get to bar 84 and the trumpets have the same rhythm, and you spend 5 minutes working on them. Now, if you've studied your score, of course, you know it's the same rhythm, so you can put them together even if the notes don't match up. If it's a rhythmic problem, you can work the two together, and you save yourself a lot of time in that way. You also keep more people interested and invested in the rehearsal, so that's really important, to have an idea of the structure. It's also an aid to memory. If you're trying to learn the piece, to have that framework in your head is important and really good to memorize. Now, we'll get on to memory perhaps a little bit later on, but think about the structure of the piece for sure. I'll start marking up my score at this point. You can have a big long debate about red pencils, blue pencils, normal pencils, whatever you like. There's countless things online if you like to get into that. But I use a system. I've got red pencil, blue pencil, and green pencil, which I'll illustrate in a minute. I'll be looking at phrasing. It's really important. That's the basis of your music making, is how you're going to tell this story, how you're going to make this music sound, and how you're going to phrase it. So it's important to think about phrasing. Put phrase lengths in. That's a good way, so when you start on the phrase, you have an idea of where you're going to. That's important. Instrumental entries, you'll know your players. If people are uncertain on counting, I've known some wonderful players, absolutely awesome trumpet player, can't count more than the fingers on one hand. So I know that, so I know he's going to need a cue. Also, if you're conducting, a Wagner opera, for instance, your trombones might have been resting for half an hour. So it's only fair that you give them an indication of when you come in. No, it's not Nick Bailey, by the way. So have a think about instrumental entries, principal lines as well. So what Schoenberger called the Hauptstimme and the Nebenstimme, basically the principal line and the secondary line, and then everything else will tend to be accompaniment. So it's not necessarily there's only two lines you need to hear. Of course you need to hear it all, but you need to be thinking about what needs to come out. Now, also, when you're rehearsing, think about what you can take down rather than what you can take out, simply because the wind band, the brass band, these are powerful ensembles, so is the orchestra, but particularly with wind instruments, you can just end up enjoying the feeling of the sound and the volume and all the rest of it, and we get carried away and everything's just too loud, and you miss a line that can't compete, say a solo oboe line. You're going to have to take the rest of the band down. So it's really important to have an idea in the score of how you're going to approach that. And harmony as well. Now, someone will no doubt tell me that harmony should have been the first thing I think about, and that you should never approach a score until you've done a full harmonic analysis. Yeah, it would be great to have that kind of time, but many of us don't. But you definitely need to have it in your mind you can learn when to see when the harmony is changing, when there's important harmony, of course with key signatures and so on and so forth. As that is your basis, you get an idea of where you're going, and you can hear it in your head. So that's really important. Harmony is absolutely fundamental to your approach to a piece of music, so you must consider it early. So there are loads of approaches to this. I'd encourage you to look at Mark Heron's articles on this, and Tim Renish's website. They've got some really, really top things about score preparation and approach to rehearsal. So do have a look at those. I'd also, I'll show you a few things here. There's loads of approaches to score study. I think there's a European one that says, the 7 goes through. There's another idea that says you should sing through every part or play through every single part. And again, it would be great, and you get a really in-depth knowledge of that. It would be great to have the kind of time to do that. But if you're conducting Mahler 9, you're going to need a fair amount of time. So this is Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 4. Did this for my finals at Royal Northern College of Music with a wonderful award-winning, in fact, Manchester Camerata. And you can see that I haven't really coloured in a lot on this. This is one of the cadenzas. I'm fortunate to work with Michael Seal at the BBC Phil. And I said, I've got Beethoven 4th Piano Concerto coming up. What should I do? And he said, just nail the runs. And unfortunately, under my head on my screen anyway is the run, which I've subdivided into little bits so I can catch it and then bring the orchestra in on time. And just at the bottom of the page, I've just put in a kind of a structural note, a key note, and that's all that I needed to put on there. A lot of the scholarship's been done in an text. So this is the other piece I conducted for my finals. Wonderful Mendelssohn Nocturno. And again, there's not a lot there, but because the harmony is so crucial, I've put in where it's going underneath the stave, because actually that's what I need to know. It's not about entries, it's not about direction. I had the phrasing very, very clearly set out. And what I needed, actually, just as a reference, was the harmonic thing. Now, this is all an aid. That's the thing. I find it difficult to not always conduct the beat. But as I also conduct choirs, where you beat the offbeats entries, is it okay to do this for the orchestra, or is it better to stay with the beat? Great question, Vicky Shefdock. Yeah, great question, and we'll get on to that. So this is another piece called Music of the Spheres by Philip Spark, and this is more kind of what I do tend to. You can see there's a bit of colour and ink gone on there. So the dynamics I put in red, instrumental entries I have in green, and then I've got in blue the time changes and marks of expression. So at the top there you can see I find people use the umbrella stick or the triangle for 3 or a square for 4. I found the quickest way to recognise what I was doing was just to write it, because it's easier for me to recognise 3/4 into 11/8 than it is to do some hieroglyphics. Within that 11/8 bar though, you see at the top there and in the middle, I've done a little cross, that's my 4. And then I've put extra crosses on there. That's to show the longer beat within the bar. So that's a bar of 4 going 3, 3, 3, 2, and then we're into the 14/8. So 3 quavers, 3 quavers, 3 quavers, 2 quavers. That's how I divided that up. The 14/8 bars in 5, and the same thing. The first 4 beats have got they've got 3 quaver beats in, and then the last one's got 2. So that's just how I do it. Find what works for you and stick to it. This is the same piece, but a little later on. With bars that have lots of runs in or very quick, rapid notes. Sometimes the bar can seem uneven, so you see the quavers there in the accompaniment. They've been stretched because of what's going on in the horns. So what I've done there is, and this is just for rehearsal, and this is my study, how I break it down in my own head. I've put big long lines down of pencil, and I don't think it's generally a good idea. Even subconsciously, it'll break the sound of the phrase, which you don't want to do. It'll break sorry, I'm just seeing now. What do you think about paper versus digital scores? I'm all for paper. Paper's never going to crash in the middle of a concert or run out of battery. So what I've done here is I've put those the big pencil lines and then the blue pencil lines just to divide it up. Now, some people will say it's absolute anathema to abuse a score in this way, and I get their point. However, this is for me to learn. So all this preparation is before I've got in the rehearsal room. This is my preparation. So how I'm going to learn it and how I'm thinking about how I'm going to rehearse it. So it's much as a learning thing. You know, once you get to the concert, you shouldn't be thinking about these kind of, you shouldn't need these markings really. So this again, The Tale Is Yet Untold, Philip Spark, fantastic. Got the opportunity to play it with the Corey band, sat next to Dave Childs, which was unbelievable, back in 2010 I think, and I conducted my brass band with it at the recent area contest. So similar thing here, I've got the markings at the top, time signature and the tempo mark. You can see there I've put the lower cornets, they've got some blue lines, the kind of rep second cornets in the SOP there, and then the entries in green. So that's just kind of how I do it. Now, by the time I get to a score, it tends to look like this by the day of the concert. So at the top of there, I've got my little tabs for where the movements are, and again, that's just to save a bit of time in rehearsal. And down the right-hand edge there, you'll see that I've got loads of tabs in there. They're rehearsal marks, and I've put in 1 through 7 in priority order. So if the fire alarm goes off 10 minutes into the rehearsal, at least I've rehearsed the thing I really needed to rehearse, and so on and so forth. Again, that's after recording myself in the rehearsal, so I can look back and identify where I need to work on and what's going to be most efficient and of most benefit. Here we go then. What have we got here? This is perhaps the best idea of how I look at scores. So here we've got a piece called Acrid Lines by a Scottish composer called Tom Harrold. Great guy, lovely guy, and a fantastic musician. He's had his music played at the last night at the Proms as well. It can be really intense music and very busy music, but fantastically well written. And this piece, I recorded it on the Polyphonic label when I was up at the Royal Northern. And so I had this absolutely great opportunity, but it's difficult music to hear in my head for sure. So it was really important for me to analyse it and get the hold of it. So you can see at the bottom of the score there, I've got the notes that are in the opening cluster because orally I just couldn't get a hold of it. So I had to look into it. And again, the instruments in green, dynamics in red. Now, the back page is as instructive as anything else. These are my markings on the back of the score. So Tom Harrold, and I found that working with composers such as Martin Ellerby, Nigel Clark, Adam Gorb, Tom Harrold, they're very, very generous with their time and their expertise. So I rang Tom up and we worked on the recording together actually. But I emailed him and asked him for a bit of background to it, so I've got a hook of where to go in. So what he told me is at the bottom of the score, and again it's my score, so no one else is going to borrow this, so I can write on it as much as I like. And then just a little line at the top, maybe to introduce it to the band. I use it for my director of music exam as well. To introduce it to the band, if I thought it was going to be worth just giving them a little outline, because it's quite difficult music perhaps for them to recognise immediately. So that might give it a little intro. But the manuscript in the middle, that's really important as to my analysis. Now, particularly modern music, but it might not be in a traditional structure like a rondo form or a variation form. It might be structured through themes. So it's really important to find that structure. And that's what I did with Acrid Lines. So I've written the themes down. And again, it's efficiency of rehearsal, because what you work on with a group in the band, you are definitely going to have to work on, almost certainly going to have to work on with someone else. So it's really important, even if you don't play it together, that you say, okay, clarinets, we're going from 36, cornets, listen into this because you get this at bar 84, or whatever it is. Keep the rehearsal together, keep everyone interested and everyone invested in it. And then the structure, that bottom bit there is the kind of form it's taken, where the themes come in. And again, that's an aid to learning and an aid to memory, because many of you will have been in the situation where you get in a rehearsal with perhaps a new piece of music, perhaps a difficult piece of music, and it's sensory overload because what's coming out of the band, you're analysing all the time. The amount of things that you need to work on, that you might need to change, and there's so much going on in your brain. You've got to have that score absolutely nailed into your brain and into your heart, your soul, if you can. So that's Acrid Lines there, and then this is my score for the Mountbatten Festival of Music 2019. You can see at the top there, this is Norwegian Pirate, fantastic piece arranged by our core bandmaster. And at the score there, it's just got the outline of the structure, and again that was an aid for me to remember it, so that I could get my head out of the score and start rehearsing properly. So that's score preparation, but you know, all these markings are a learning tool for me. You should have done all the learning before you get in front of the band. Have a very clear idea of how it's meant to sound, how you want it to sound before you stand in front of the band, and then you can spend your time with your head out of the score and looking out. Don't be rigid though. You know, don't expect that it's going to go a certain way. Plan for it and hope for it, but roll with the punches. So let's take a few questions. So yeah, I find it difficult to not always conduct the beat. It depends completely on your ensemble. If you've got a good enough ensemble, they won't need it. I'm going to talk about the kind of food chain in a rehearsal, but a story for me is in front of the Dutch Marines, astonishingly good band, and I got in front of them and I prepared my score. It was Fantasy Variation by James Barnes, and so you know, gave the tempo, and then off we went, and it was perfect. And so I had 8 bars of panic, well, you know, just my brain whirring so fast as, what am I here for? Why am I here? And actually I'm there to unify these wonderful musicians' musical ideas and show them how I wanted it to go. So immediately, going up the food chain to that top level, they didn't need the beat. Now in a variation form, you've got to give them the beat that you're going to start off with. But after that, you're there for what they need. Our job is to serve the music and the musicians, so that we all serve the audience by getting the results out. So it's work on what you need to work on. See a musical idea through. Don't try and do everything all at once, because the messages you're giving out, remember, it's all non-verbal communication. The messages you're giving out will be confused. So see a musical line through and a musical idea through, clock in everything else that's going on, and then you can, next time you go through it, work on something else. I've conducted choirs as well, you know, with a choral background. I've conducted military wives choirs and so on and so forth. And it's a very different beast. I use my hands shaping a lot more. I never used a stick. I use the beat as a handrail for expression. But you know, the organist and master of the choristers used to give it one of them, and you just go down, and that was it. And then when he started again, you'd go down. But everyone got it. You look at these great choirs, and very rarely have they got someone just beating time at them. It's something about it, just it doesn't need that. If it needs that, particularly with youth ensembles, then use that, of course, but don't be stuck to it. Any tips on getting your head out of the score and finding myself looking down too much? Yeah, it's a common problem. We use it as a safety blanket. It's there, so we look at it. Try putting yourself out of your comfort zone. Close the score. See how you get on. And then when you look down, you'll see nothing, so you'll immediately look up again. It's a habit. And like any habit, it's important that, you know, it'll take time to get out of, but it's also something you need to be aware of. The eyes are so crucial in communication, and your face as well. It took me ages to get my face to do anything except look bored, which was terrible for the band. And the Royal Marines are a wonderful bunch, so they knew me, so they knew that I wasn't bored and I was just concentrating. But it's so important that you show things with your face as well as your hands. So if you're looking down, have your stand at a height where you can look down with your eyes but not your head, so that subconsciously, because they're mainly looking out the corner of their eyes, so that you can be looking down without looking like you're looking down. So that's really important as well. You know, I think it's to expect to do everything from memory, unless you've got a photographic memory or some uber kind of sense of how to learn a score in no time flat. You know, having the score there is perfectly fine. We'd all like to conduct from memory, but really that means knowing every single part, every single beat of every single piece, and that's a big ask for most people. So just try and look around more. Remember, you're working with people. So in a conversation, You know, we see it a lot nowadays, people on the phone, having a conversation on the phone. It's rude, isn't it? And people looking down, and so you're not engaged with people. If you think of that, think of your score as the mobile phone. Look up and communicate with your players. It's difficult, and it is a habit. You know, people will be watching this going, yeah, take your own advice, Sam. But it's really important that you do, because also then you can read the room in a rehearsal, and you can make sure that, you know, you see that, oh, they're struggling, or he's rubbing his chops, he needs a bit of time, he's weeping in the corner, maybe I won't pick him up anymore. Only joking. And so, you know, all that kind of thing. So it is really important. So just try and be familiar and be confident that you know it, you've done the preparation. Right, so let's move into rehearsing. We're kind of there already. I'm going to now give you the best bit of advice that I think I've ever got, and it was from Mark Herron at the Royal Northern College of Music. Mark is a wonderful teacher, great bloke, but what a teacher. And halfway through rehearsal he said, Sam, be a manager, not a pundit. What that means, and you see it up and down the length of the country, particularly with brass bands, don't mechanically wave through something and then get to the end and tell them where they went wrong. A manager, that's punditry. Anyone can do that. People do that in a pub on a Friday night. Anyone can do that. The manager, what we're here for, is to make sure it doesn't go wrong. More than that, make sure it's going how we want it to go, and helping the players through it and managing it in real time. If someone's struggling, addressing it, not stopping the entire band and going, you're lost. He knows he's lost. So, you know, just bring him in, give him a symbol, something like that, and be aware of what's going on. So be a manager, not a pundit. Warm up, you know, think about warming up your ensemble. I often use hymn tunes, simply because they're a very good method of getting everyone's mind in the game. It's not about, people should turn up prepared to play, but their minds might not be there. They may have been flashing around doing the thing that they've most recently learned. They may have had a 10-hour day at work. They've had to sort the children out, and they've then made an hour or 2 hour journey to band and just had time to blow a few notes in. So their head isn't really in the game yet. So give them a chance. Give your ensemble the chance to corporately get to know itself again. And hymn tunes are a great way of doing that. Chords also useful for hearing and getting the ears working. Scales. You can then, you know, do some mental exercises such as transposition in hymn tunes and so on. Different articulations, making sure the tuning is good with different articulations is really important as well. So use that time, not too long. You know, rehearsal time is precious. But I think, I read somewhere the Budapest Festival Orchestra or something, even they rehearse with a chorale. Now, you won't find that happening in the UK, but it just goes to show that it does happen all over. It's certainly not a Mickey Mouse thing to do. Plan the rehearsal. You should always go in with a plan and be prepared to change it. Eisenhower said, plans are useless, planning is essential. It's really important that you go in there and then you've got something that you can change with the circumstances and with how the musicians are doing that day. Think of a bathtub and maybe a series of bathtubs so that you start and you get playing. Really important to get your players going and all playing together. You know, I was helping some students in a university up in Manchester, and they played about 3 bars, and then he started ripping the euphonium players apart. And yeah, they haven't even had a chance to play anything yet. Get everyone playing with a new piece of music. Really really important to play through a piece, go back to the start, play it again. The musicians themselves will sort out half of the issues. So it's really important, and get playing. And we don't turn up to talk, do we? We don't turn up for a musicology lecture. We don't turn up to listen to someone enjoying the sound of their own voice. We turn up to play to a rehearsal. So keep playing. And then, you know, play a bit, work on a bit of detail, play a bit, keep the rehearsal moving. Work in segments. If you've got to break anything down, give it 3 goes perhaps. If it's not, then leave it. Leave the players to do it themselves in their own time, or program a sectional, because everyone else is waiting for them to finish. Now, if you can use that time to put it across in different sections, that's even better. But if you've got to fix something, you know, don't embarrass the players by just hammering it. If they're just not going to get it today, you know, give them the time to look at it. Maybe the section leader can take them, give them 10 minutes at the end of the rehearsal to sort that out, because that is time better spent. You're not wasting the ensemble's time. So I've spoken about moving up the food chain, by which I mean, sort the basics out, and then you're moving on to what you need to do musically and emotionally and spiritually and all the rest of it, which is what music's all about. Now, we'd all like to exist on this higher plane of, just waving our arms and this wonderful music comes out. In reality, it doesn't work like that. And even, watching masterclasses with Sir Mark Elder, for instance, with the Halle. In fact, it was just a normal rehearsal, and he was moving up and down the chain, because even musicians of that caliber, they're wonderful, wonderful musicians. Sometimes the woodwind tuning might just not be right. They can't sort it out themselves. So that's what we're here for. We're here to help them. And also ensemble, being together, being in tune, being together. That's all that base level stuff. But he was going up and down the chain, working at the very highest level of that's possible in a conductor, and then getting down to the basics and making it all work. So move up and down the food chain as you need to. What is really important is not to pander. Don't tell the ensemble what's on the page, because they can read it. You will suppress the band's ability if you just tell them what's on the page. That's their job to read. Make sure you talk about music. Make sure you work on these higher levels and work on what's not on the page and getting together what is on the page. But if you just tell them time and time again, oh, that's mezzo forte, it says staccato, they should be reading that. And eventually they'll just get used to it and they'll wait for you to say it. Keep everyone interested, we've said about that. But the main thing to take away from this, which is ironic because I'm talking at you for an hour non-stop, but don't talk. We're not there to talk. So Mark Elder, again, I'm name dropping a lot, but it's just everything he says is gold. He reckons you got 9 words. 9 words. That's not a lot. But he says 9 words and you've lost the orchestra. Accuracy, brevity, clarity. Say what you need to say, and say it with the words you need to say it as short as humanly possible. So it's really important that you don't talk. There's an exercise again Mark Heron got us to do after a masterclass, and he said, right, watch your videos back and write down everything you said. I can tell you now, that is an exercise you only ever want to do once, because there are so many words. You're writing reams and reams of pages of A4, and it's dreadful. You just realise how much you repeat yourself, how many ums and ahs you put in for a start. You'll probably have heard a few of those, and how many things you're trying to say in 3 different ways. Perhaps you'll need to do that, explain it a different way if it hasn't happened first time round. But play it, if it still hasn't worked, say it short, but in a different way. Keep the talking to a minimum. No one goes there to listen to someone giving a musicology lecture. You go there to play. And however good your talking is, if you've identified a brilliant point, a world-beating, epoch-changing point, they've still got to put it into practice. So it's no good saying it again and again. Get them to play it, and then you'll see if it's worked. So use pictures and stories if you can. A picture can paint 1,000 words. So if, rather than going through with the fine-tooth comb and going, right, it's more skirt sound over there, a little bit shorter staccatos, I need a bit more of this, that and the other, you can actually just say, this is a picture in my head. I've got the little Martian, and he's popping out of his hole, and he's looking round, and then he goes back down again. That's the bit at B, and he's scampering around. That's the little clarinet bit, and then he's sneaking up on the astronaut. They might think the ensemble might think you're talking absolute nonsense, but it might actually save you a lot of time, because if they're all in that thing, okay, we've all got a picture now. Some of it speaks for itself. Morning, Grieg, and all that stuff. Night on Bear Mountain, it speaks for itself, but sometimes it doesn't, and it's worth just putting your own little story to it. But the main thing is, time management is crucial. Never, ever go over. Respect your players more than that. But the main thing to take away from this is, whatever you're doing and however you're doing it, be enthusiastic, be relaxed, and be happy. Now, there are people watching this who will think, yeah, Sam, take your own advice. And it's true. I have occasionally struggled because I've been frustrated, because I know how good they can be, and they're not. Maybe there's not concentration going on, maybe for all those different reasons. But I can also tell you from experience, it will not get any better by getting angrier. And there's a famous incident that a few of us have heard of, where a few of us were there, where a conductor was getting particularly irate, and he was getting more and more worked up, and it was getting worse and worse because everyone was getting tenser and tenser. And then he slammed his baton on the desk and went, "Relax!" Which is absolutely hilarious because, of course, everyone's like, okay. So, it's not going to make anything better. If you can relax people, if it's all gone Pete Tom, then take a break, have a cup of tea, come back. But don't lose your rags, certainly not. You're working with human beings. Be a human being. You don't know, or maybe you do know what's going on in people's personal lives, but they might have had some bad news or whatever it is. You should never kind of denigrate your players, never embarrass your players. Remember, and this is another great bit of advice, the baton makes no noise. You need the players, and our job is to serve the players and serve the music so that we're getting the result to serve the audience. So we've had a few questions there. Let's scroll down, see if I can see any. Any advice for improving band intonation? Both improve my ability to give advice to fix intonation and exercises to improve band members recognising their own intonation. Great question. So it's give the players the ownership of the problem. So whilst you should be able to, at any point, say the first trombone sharp on his D, you should be able to stop the band and go, first trombone, you're sharp on that D. Is that fixing the problem? On a surface level, yes. But isn't it better to go, trombones, we've got a slight issue with intonation. Isolate them so that they can hear properly, so the rest of the ensemble isn't doing it. You tend to find they play a bit quieter. And also, then the first trombone player can work it out for himself. Also, maybe it sounded like the first trombone player was sharp because the bass trombone player was trying to strip paint. It may be that, obviously, there are some very tasteful bass trombone players out there. But it might be that it was just a balance issue. And once they've heard that, then they've got ownership of it so that they can take that on and apply it to every situation. It's not getting tuners out in rehearsals. I hate it. I hated it as a player, and I never do it as a conductor because it's one moment in time according to one machine. It's not using your ears. These are on all the time, so use them. So giving advice to the players, just keep it as simple as you can. Don't. If you're take a gamble, it's either flat or sharp, isn't it? So if you're not sure, just go, I think you're a bit bright. Push in. The push in, it gets worse. Pull out. Just go the other direction. It's no problem. If you're not quite sure, you can say, I'm not quite sure. Can I just listen to that again? But give the ownership to the players, and that will stand you in better stead. Exercises, well, again, hymn tunes are great for it. And then just pause. As you're conducting along, just pause. Because people tend to think of the next note coming up, which is good, but they're maybe not listening to what they're doing in the present moment, particularly young players or amateur players. So make sure that you just stop there, and then all of a sudden people go, oh, why has it stopped? Oh yeah, and switch their ears on. So it's important to do that. You can use scales. You can go up all sorts of different scales, either in unison or in chords. Because chords change relationships. It's only really in the 20th century that we've got used to everything being a definite pitch. It doesn't exist. That's equal temperament tuning. A chord will sing if it's in relative tune with itself, which depends on the key you're in and all the acoustics and all the rest of it. So lugs are absolutely vital to all of this. All right, we got anything else in there for the moment? Flutes are the most difficult to keep in tune, I find. Do you? Well, there's very mean people have said, how do you get 3 piccolos in tune? Get rid of 2. It's not true. It's not true. Out in the President's Own band, I heard Stars and Stripes Forever, 3 piccolo players, beautiful, perfectly in tune. It may be they're a bit more shrill. It may be the second clarinet player is struggling just as much, but it's in the weeds, so you don't hear it as much. You've just got to give everyone the opportunity to try and fix their own intonation. Give them the chance to fix it themselves, and if they haven't fixed it, that's what we're here for. We're here to sort it out. If you need someone to solve the argument, if you like, you can. If you're in an orchestra, get your principal cello to play an open string. There's no argument with that. So then, if it's a problem in the woodwind, could you just play as an open G? Open G, right, that's your G, build it up from the bassoons and so forth, and then everyone gets it. So again, this happens at all levels, so really don't worry about it. I should remind you now that after this, Band Corporal Amy Phillips is going to be online to answer any questions about recruiting or anything you got to think in the band service. There was a question a little while ago about what ensembles do you conduct in the band service. Well, all sorts of different, basically anything that's in mainstream Western music, if you like, we conduct it. So orchestras, small orchestras, we've got the big band, the wind band, both symphonic wind band and small wind band, the parade band, of course, concert band. It's really anything that there is. We do with such versatile musicians and versatile bands, and of course, as the, if you like, the chief conductor, it's my job to be part of that. And with the bandmaster as well, you know, we've got a really good skill set to tackle. The bandmaster's course tackles a variety of repertoire, and you've got to write for big band, you've got to write for fanfare team and for the band and the orchestra. So you've got a real good inner working knowledge of how it works, as well as how to direct it. I have a mixed setup with a lot of winds, brass with small string section. How would you position them? Yeah, I'd say how you've got that is pretty good. It'll depend on the hall. You know, with a small string section, you're always going to struggle to get them across, I think, in the sound. So think about positioning. Famous example of an irate conductor who couldn't hear the harp. Instead of moving the harp to the front, he just shouted at her to put all the pedals down, which of course isn't how it works. Position how it's going to work best. Think about facing inwards as well. It'll depend on the hall, very much so. Sometimes you haven't got a choice of where to put people, and you've got to balance and think about just taking all the dynamics down. Playing in churches, you know, with all that boom, you can lose so much detail, so you've got to take everything down. How long do you prepare for MFM? Your whole life. You get the music a little bit before, and then we've got I think 3 days rehearsal before we go to the Royal Albert Hall, and then it's kind of technical rehearsals and things from there. So let's have a little talk about conducting. What is the job of a conductor? Well, there are many definitions, but we've got to serve the music and musicians and add value. You're there to add value all the time. I've spoken to many professional musicians who say there are three types of conductor. The ones that make it worse, the ones that make it neither better nor worse, and the ones that make it better. You usually get them, you don't mind getting them, and you can't afford them. So don't be like that. That's a really, that's a terrible thing that these musicians are kind of getting seen off with bad conductors. Always add value. You've got to bring something to the party. Particularly with good ensembles, they can do it without you. So you're there to add value, to add musical value, to add character, to add something, to bring something to the party. So always do that. Really, I think a lot about musical leadership and military leadership and how similar they are. And many musicians will think that's absolute madness. But actually, our job is to lead and inspire. The same it is with our Royal Marines that we're so privileged to lead. It's the same with music. We've got to lead and inspire. You've got to be there to make the decisions. The worst thing you can do in many spheres of life is to not make a decision. Make a decision and make it work. All that work is done beforehand with your score preparation and your rehearsals, but make that decision. And you're there to unify these musical ideas. If you're working with a professional ensemble or a professional orchestra, you've got 100 brilliant musicians, professional standard musicians, all with their own ideas of how they should go. And they're all valid. What your job is to do is to hear that and hear what they're giving you, but also to lead them and mould them into a unified musical performance. So you haven't got 100 different interpretations of how this goes. You've got a version that's absolutely beautiful, that makes perfect sense, and is musically valid, and is going to entertain the audience and give them what they need. So it's, that's what we're there for. Have an idea, make a decision, lead and inspire your people, and realise the music. We're there to bring out what's on the score. We're there to bring it to life and present it to the audience, whether that's a piece of Beethoven or a brand new piece of music from the Royal Marines Band Service. Many talented arrangers and conductors that we've got. We're there to try realise this music and entertain and all that stuff. So I'm not going to get into any conducting technique because it's a massive subject and maybe a topic for another day. What I will say is I really enjoy doing this stuff. I hope you've all got something out of this. Because I really enjoy passing on the wonderful tuition that I've had and also the ideas that I've got. So do get in touch, use the hashtag RMBS Masterclasses. I'd love to answer any more of your questions, and maybe even if you've got people interested in joining the Royal Marines in a music hub or a youth ensemble, you know, I'd love to come out and see you for rehearsal if I'm allowed to do that, and if you invite me. So it'll be great to do that. Band Corporal Amy Phillips is on at the end. Before I answer a couple of more questions, I'll just say thank you very much to the recruiting team for the Royal Marines Band Service, Colour Sergeant Matt Michelle, Band Corporal Amy Phillips, and the tech team, the PR team under W1 Side Trip with Corporal James Dunlop doing a wonderful job for us and keeping all this quality content going out. I've got here, motivating is important. I think keeping it positive, especially if you have musicians that are amateurs and there for pleasure, and you just know they're doing their best. Couldn't agree more, absolutely. And something I got from Bjarte Engested in Norway is, because I was taking this Stavanger brass band and it was very, you know, fix this, do this, which was how I rehearsed at the time. And he said, be positive. You know, not only does it make for a nicer environment, but it's really interesting to think how you can do this. And it comes into coaching, and I've done a bit of coaching and mentoring training as well through the Royal Marines. Got a kind of level 3 in coaching and mentoring, which is fantastic. And it comes into being positive. The brain only remembers stuff that that is positive. So if you say, don't do that, the brain, to remember it, has got to think of what it's actually meant to be doing. So instead of, you're too loud, try, could you play that quieter please? It's a positive request, but you're getting the same effect, but it's in a nicer way. And it will, you know, certainly with kind of younger players, you're too loud, we'll get them to tense up. If you say, could you play that quieter? It keeps the air flowing, and it's, you know, their airflow, they're thinking about doing something positive with it. So that's a lot better. So keep things positive. Cannot band service officers choose where to study for their MUs? In a way, we choose where to audition, and then it's up to the conservatoire whether they want to take us or not. So we're in a competitive pool with you know, international competition for these places, the top conservatoires such as the Royal Northern College of Music. We've had Director of Music go to Birmingham Conservatoire, to the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. These top conservatoires. So it's a competitive audition, and so that's really good for us because we know we're meant to be there because we're mixing it with the civilians from all around the world. And of course, with that international sphere and that international take on it, it gives us a really good perspective and lots of different avenues to explore and ways of thinking, and people from different backgrounds. So that's really good for us. So we kind of choose, but we're kind of chosen as well. Yeah. So in the thinking about being positive, coaching and mentoring comes into this quite a lot, particularly if you've got young players. But what I didn't realise again is with my brass band that is full of wonderful people. Some professional players, you know, music teachers, classroom music teachers. We've got nurses in there. We've got a whole heap of different background of people. And some of them have been in that band since it was in the 4th section. It's now in the championship section. But what I forgot was actually they might not have had the tuition that I've had. They might not have been as lucky to have what I've had, and they might not actually know how to do this. So the coaching and mentoring is super important if you think about trying to get the best result. And whilst you can't give someone a lesson in the middle of a rehearsal because the rehearsal's there to rehearse all together, it's important to remember that actually, yeah, the coaching and mentoring is a really important part of it, being super positive, but also using the expertise. You know, if there's a clarinet problem, I'm not best placed to solve it. The principal clarinetist, or even any one of the clarinet players, might have a really good idea of how to solve that, so let them solve it. Even a brass player might well have a better idea of how to solve it than I have. So again, let them, as long as it's not taking over the rehearsal. It can be really valuable, and it also creates this feeling of togetherness, of corporate spirit, that we're all improving together and we're on a journey, and that's really important. And I think, you know, there's value in that. There's always someone better than you, and there's value in that in every respect. So I will take every opportunity to learn, as we should all do. Nick West's masterclass of a few weeks ago about being a rounded musician, absolutely perfect. Be a rounded musician, soak it all up, and then take it into your bands and ensembles. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that's been of some use. Good luck with your music making, with leading whichever ensembles you're in, with conducting. Keep the comments coming in. Like and share, subscribe to our social media channels, and please do ask Band Corporal Amy Phillips any questions you may have about careers in the Royal Marines. It's a fantastic job. I've been doing it over 2 decades now, and it's a privilege to lead the people we've got, and it's a great career. A career in professional music, it's not getting any easier out there, particularly as a student. So think of the Royal Marines Band Service for a career in professional music. Thanks very much, everybody, and stay safe.